Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome. This is Fiona at Drawings in a Drawer, and today we are going to talk about watercolor tips, or things I would have liked to have known about watercolor if I had been starting now or when I was at the beginning of my journey. Some of them may sound a little obvious to you if you've already been painting with this medium for a while, or if you're just starting out, they might be helpful, or at least I hope so. So let's start with the first tip. This might seem very obvious, but when you're mixing your colours, use a large brush like the one you see me using here. Even if you're mixing something you plan to use for a smaller area and will be using a smaller brush for, this will save you so much time, and it will allow you to get all of your mixture ready in one go rather than having to go back in several times, which is something I still do all of the time and I keep reminding myself. So I thought this would be a useful tip for you to keep in mind when painting. Tip number 2, get a fully loaded brush. When you dip your brush into your wells or mixture, be sure you give it a proper roll so every side of it is loaded. Otherwise, your bristles will be dry on one side and the flow of paint will not be even. Tip number 3, you don't need expensive watercolor paints to make good paintings or to learn watercolor. Of course, you can't go for kids' paints that you pick up at the dollar store or places like that because they're filled with chalk and they're not the real thing. But there are many brands like Roman Small or White Knights or Cotman by Winsor & Newton that are good quality without being too pricey. Or even better, buy individual tubes, just a few of them. If I had to choose, I'd start with cerulean blue, Madder Lake Red Light, raw sienna, cadmium red and neutral tint. I can basically complete any portrait with these colours alone or even less in my specific style. Personally, I would pick these, but of course you don't even need that many. You need maybe the primary colours, that's already enough. So think of that. Buy tubes instead of buying an already pre-made palette. Tip number 4, the sketch. It's really hard to create a good painting if you don't have a good foundation. You need to have a solid sketch. In the case of portraits, you need to have balance, a realistic level of symmetry. You can't improve a bad sketch through painting, especially with watercolour because it's transparent. So keep practicing drawing if it's something you enjoy, or if you don't enjoy drawing or you just don't have the time, then I would consider tracing your sketch. Tip number 5, get good quality paper. This is possibly something you will have heard before, but I feel you have to be very skilled to paint on cellulose paper. You have to know just when to stop and how much or how little water to use because the paper will peel and absorb the colour unevenly. I cannot paint on cellulose paper. My work looks horrible on it. So paper is the one thing that you need to splash out on a little. Be sure it's 100% cotton and at least 300 GSM or 140 pounds. Be sure that when you paint, it's taped down on 4 sides or that you're painting on a block that is glued down on 4 sides. Otherwise, your paper will buckle. Tip number 6, or rather more like a fact than a tip. Learning watercolour is all about water control. How much water is on your brush, in your mixing tray, in the actual pan of paint. Take notice, practice, swatch and keep checking and experimenting because believe me, you are never done learning and that's the beauty of this journey. And that ties into my tip or fact, again, number 7. We have 2 techniques we paint in with watercolour. Wet and wet is where we paint with wet paint on an already wet surface, and that can be wet with just clear water, like putting clear water on your paper and starting out a painting like that, or wet because the layer is still wet and you're using wet paint on a wet layer of paint, or wet on dry. And wet and dry is when we paint with wet paint on dry paper right out of the gate, or even with wet paint on a layer that has already dried or that you have dried. Tip number 8, use a heat tool. I think they're also called hot air pistols. A small hair dryer will do, but smaller tools like this one that I showed you will take up less space and be easier to handle. It can get very boring waiting for a layer to dry, so you can go in and paint the next one like you have to do very often with hair, or when you're going in with the final details towards the ends of a painting. Tip number 9, if you're looking for your style, which you probably are or have been or will be at one point, think outside the box. Don't be afraid of using unusual colours in unusual places. In my case, I like using greens and blues and violets and bright pinks and reds or even oranges in the skin. So just don't be afraid to be creative, and if you make a mistake, at the most you will have ruined some paper. You can turn it over and start painting again. So just experiment. And I can't believe it, we're already at tip number 10, but stick around till the end of the video for a bonus tip. Dry your brushes flat. If you dry them vertically in a cup, the bristles will spread outwards and your brushes will lose their tip. Also, it is enough to only clean and rinse watercolour brushes under the tap, without soap or using anything harsh. I only clean mine with water, and then, as I said, I lay them flat to dry. My final tip is just to have fun. Don't forget to always have fun. Don't take yourself too seriously, and don't lose the love for painting. It can happen if you talk bad at your art. That is the way I like to put it. Just be nice to what you create and don't say bad things about it. It really works to not talk negatively about what you create. I hope that wasn't too garbled and that the message came across. Anyway, this is all from me for today. I will be back again next Friday with another video. You can find me on Instagram at Drawings in a Drawer, and also you can find all my private and full-length tutorials of paintings on Patreon. I will link everything down below, and you can also find the links to these on my cover image on YouTube. I hope to see you around, and have a nice rest of your day. Bye.